Great. So this is recording for French 1, week 15. So let me share my screen real fast. All right. So hopefully you can see our French 1 tab here. All right. So we are in week 15. And excitingly enough, this is the last week of our first semester. So you've made it. Congratulations. Not terribly too much will be different next semester. Obviously, that'll start next week, next Wednesday. Just ends up, that's just the way it kind of ends up. So this will be a recording for week 15, like I said, and I'll make sure that I post my notes that I use to teach in the resources, which actually, as I'm looking at the way I've aligned these resources and everything, I might go through and make things make a little more sense here in a bit. But so that'll be, these notes will be available to you as a resource. That's something that I used for teaching right there. My handwriting is probably going to be kind of unintelligible for you, so just mainly focus on the grammar components that I've got listed here. But I'll go ahead and share the whiteboard here. Okay, so we'll start like usual with our verbs. We've got, let's see what our verbs are for today. Today we're doing dormir and écrire. Dormir and écrire. These are good verbs. I like these a lot. So dormir, and then over here we have écrire. Écrire has an accent. If you recall, the accent that goes up like this, that's accent aigu, and it means that the E is going to make a long A sound. That's what that indicates for French for us. So it's going to be dormir and écrire. Pronunciation wise, let's see, I'll type up kind of a little guide underneath each of them. Dormir. All right, so you've got an IR in French is always going to be an ER sound. Okay. And then écrire, so écrire. Just like that, again, because l'accent aigu, that accent that goes up, is going to make that E say A sound. Okay, so those are our verbs for this week. Let me put down their definitions next to them. Dormir means sleep. That's a good one to have. Repertoire, and then écrire means to write, so also a good one to have. Now, dormir, I'll tell you right off the bat, is an irregular verb, so that's a lot of fun, i.e. not. I will go ahead and type that one up for you just so that you know what that one's supposed to look like. Je dors, tu dors, il dort. Remember that the nu and vu forms typically are going to become regular. And then il, elle. All right. So that'll be the way that one works. Now, remember that we learned past tense just recently. It's one of the new things we started in on. And so what I will have you start doing for your verbs, this is kind of added additional to what you're already doing with your verbs, because you know two tenses now. When you conjugate verbs and turn them in as part of your homework, you get to do two tenses and get in the practice of that. So I'll have you conjugating and turning it in present tense and in past tense for your homework. So that's just the first part. Je dors, tu dors, il, elle dort, nous dormons, vous dormez, il, elle dort. Alrighty. And then the second part is going to be taking that verb and making it a past tense verb. So how do we accomplish that? Well, hopefully you remember our rules for making a verb past tense. We're actually going to review that here in just a second as well. But first and foremost, we should talk about, well, we can go ahead and just jump into, we could jump into écrire. Let's go ahead and just do the past tense as well. So our first step, if you remember, hopefully, is that we're going to change the infinitive, which is what you have above, the dormir, which means to sleep, to a past participle. All right, change the infinitive to a past participle. When you change it to a past participle, what you're doing is you're cutting off the ending of the verb, right? So we have 3 categories of verbs, ER, IR, RE, right? All named after the last 2 letters that come in that verb, all right? And so in this case, what we're going to do with dormir is we're going to cut off the IR, alrighty? And so dormir becomes do, just like that, okay? And then we're going to add a letter to that to change it to a past participle. And each one is going to be different. IR, RE, and ER verbs are going to have another letter added that's different. And so for an IR verb, hopefully you can look back at your notes. You're going to see that we're going to add the ending to make it past participle, make it a past participle. So for an IR verb, that's going to be I. So that means that dormir, past participle, or as we would say in French, participe passé, c'est dormir. All right. Step 3 then is use the appropriate form of avoir in present tense lines up with the person using the verb. So that means that if I was going to say I slept, I'm going to say j'ai, not, j'avons, all right? So you're going to remember, you're going to want to remember your avoir in present tense, all right? So those are our rules for how we work that. I'm going to go ahead and type up dormir in past tense real fast for you. So I can fit it all right here. J'ai dormi, tu as dormi, dormi, nous avons dormi, vous avez dormi. All right. I don't know if you can quite see that, so I'm going to move it up a little. There we go. You should be able to see. All right. J'ai dormi, tu as dormi, il a dormi, nous avons dormi, vous avez dormi, ils ont dormi. All right. So that is how we do past tense. All right. So then we get to talk about écrire. Écrire means to write. It's a good one. It is an interesting one because it is an RE verb. Sometimes we run the risk of having RE verbs, so a little funky. This one's actually pretty okay though. So I'll give you a second. Look back, try to remember what our endings are for RE. Okay, so you've got SS, nothing, right? This one pretty much starts to follow the rules and then chooses to kind of jump around a little bit. So j'écris, tu écris, écrit. All right, so S, S, and it adds a T like it's a IR verb. Nous écrivons, vous écrivez. That's very normal. That's exactly what we would expect. Ils écrivent. Exactly what we would expect there too, right? All right. So I will have to tell you the past participle for this one because it is a little funky. Écrit. it is a fairly common practice among some irregular verbs, or a good handful of irregular verbs actually, that instead of creating a past participle like you would expect them to do, so an RE verb is going to add a U to the end. That doesn't quite work with the fact that this verb has an I, écrire. So if you were to create écrire and chop off the RE and then add a U, it would become écrit, which doesn't sound anything like the verb. So the French tend to shy away from that with the verbs that have an additional vowel right there before the end of the little verb ending. And so what those verbs often will do is they will add a past participle. They'll make a past participle by using the il, elle form of the verb. So you'll notice that this is like exactly the same. See that? Il a écrit is going to use the il form of the verb to become the past participle. That's a fairly common practice you'll find. And that is because, like I said, the verb here has the RE ending, but then you'll notice that it has a vowel. Vowels, when you combine them, they start to sound really different and really weird, even in English. And so for French to maintain the verb and not lead to confusion and go, well, that doesn't sound like any verb I've ever heard before. What is that? Oh, well, that's past participle d'écrire. Really? That makes no sense. They choose to use the il form to keep it simple and straightforward and not create too much of a headache. All right. So that's the past participle. I'm not going to put écrire in past tense on the board because with the rules over there, with already having the past participle, I feel comfortable that you should be able to give that one a try in your homework on your own. We're going to give it a shot. See how you do. I have full faith in you. All right. So we're going to give that a try. But those are our verbs for this week. Dormir, to sleep, écrire, to write. Super good ones, super useful. Lots of ways you can use them. So, alrighty, here we go. We get to talk about new stuff today. Let's see what's on the docket for today. All right, so we were supposed to review RE verbs, which we literally just did when we talked about the endings there. We're also going to talk about possessive adjectives again real fast as part of our review, or as we would say en français, le révision. Le révision. Over here. Le révision. That's how we say review, revision, basically, révision, or we could say révis, we could say either. Tu le dis, Sophie, right? Both work. But we talk about les adjectifs possessifs. Adjectif possessif, so possessive adjectives. Now, that's going to be anything like my, your, his, her, their, our, etc. Okay, so anytime we're talking about adjective possessif, all right. What do we have for that? Well, we've got ma, mon, and ne for my. Okay. Now, I'll give you a second to ponder why it is again that we have 3 different options for what in English we have only one word for. Type these out. So for notre, right, there's only 2 options. But for my, your, and his or her, you'll notice that there are 3 options. The reason there are 3 options, hopefully you're able to go back over your notes and remember this, is because each of these has to line up with 2 things, 2 very important things. And those are gender and number, not of the person using the adjective, but of the number, gender of the item described. I get students that this is a bit of a struggle for them because the thought is, well, if I'm a woman, then I should use ma all the time for everything, right? And no, the answer is no. Actually, what you're basing which form off of is the item itself that you're describing. So if you're saying, for example, I'm sitting next to a chair here, the word chaise is feminine. So I would say ma chaise. But the word for around here that I can say is computer. All right, that's going to be mon ordinateur because ordinateur is a masculine noun. And so it's not based off of me as the woman, but it's based off of the gender of the noun that the possessive adjective is describing, right? So that means that you're going to end up with, like I said, ma chaise, my chair, because it's feminine. But then you're going to end up with mon ordinateur because ordinateur is masculine. All right. So keep that in mind. Now for notre, are, your, there, it's just based off of number, interestingly enough. Because these are already, I think, it's a group of people. I suppose they decided not to bother with it. I'm not 100% sure why they decided to do this. But it does make it easier to memorize because you only have to memorize 2 instead of 3 like the others. So notre is going to be the singular form, notre chaise, our chair, and nos is going to be the plural form, nos chaises, our chairs. Okay, same thing with votre and vos and leur and leur. All right, now where do these guys go? Hopefully you remember that these go before the noun. We've talked about a lot of different adjectives. Some of them end up going before, some of them end up going after. These are very specific. Yes, and so in being super specific, they go before the noun, which makes it easy because that's exactly how we do it in English. So if I was going to say, for example, my water, mon eau. Your ears, this okay. Etc. etc. Alrighty. That is how we're going to work with those. So that's just le révision. All right. Now today, the new thing we get to learn is adverbial phrases. We get to learn how to talk about how well or how poorly somebody is doing something. So adverbial phrases take you back to your teaching days, right? Adverbial phrases answer the questions. And this will be in those notes as well. Adverbial phrases answer the questions. Answer the questions. Ready? How, when, where, to what extent, under what condition, why, right? I don't know if you ever did Schoolhouse Rock in your classrooms, if you had that age range, but you have the, was it Lolly? Get your adverts here at the Lolly's Adverse store, right? How, when, where, to what extent, under what reason, or rather under what condition. Sorry, let me change that. Under what condition is actually what I mean. For what? I think is the next question, right? Yeah. So they answer these questions: how, when, where, to what extent, under what condition, for what reason, why. Okay. These guys are useful. We have them in French. List of adverbial phrases for you. Nope, I just want a list of French adverbs. All right. I don't want to know what an adverb is, but I want to use one. Go. All right. So when we talk about adverbial phrases, really mainly what we're doing is we're talking about adverbs, right? Adverbs, and they're getting used in phrases. Phrases is another word for a sentence, right? So using adverbs in a sentence. We got a whole lot of different options for you. So here's a list, and I'll actually put a link in this with the resources as well, because I obviously will not have time to write up all of these. This is a great list off of Flawless French. Has a great list of adverbs. And of course, you can always Google more off of options like uh, what is it, reference word dictionary. Give you a link to that as well. Actually, it's a great source for online French dictionary for looking up new words that you may not know. It's really accurate. I'll let you have that as well. That way you can stay as far away from Google Translate as you possibly can, because Patrick will tell you, Google Translate's not as accurate as you think it is. So, but some ideas of some adverbs. Bien. Bien means well. Bien. Bien means well. Enrichissement. Oop, that's a Z, not an S. Enrichissement. Enrichissement means like happily, or we would say, fortunately, I can't type that. Enrichissement. This one's fun to say. I like saying it. Or u se monte. Enrichissement. Happily or fortunately. So what else we have? Beaucoup. Beaucoup is one that we actually use a lot in English. So we know what that one means. It means a lot. And you probably know how to say that one as well. Beaucoup, right? Très is a phrase that we will often use. It means very. It's got an accent over the E. It's an accent grave. Let's see what else I have. Jamais means ever, or it can mean like never. So if you were going, well, if you're going to say, I've never seen something like that before, you would say, je n'ai jamais vu quelque chose comme ça. But jamais is ever. Sometimes. Parfois. It's a fun one. Often. Souvent. All right, so that's just kind of a small sampling. Obviously, there's thousands of French adverbs, but that'll do for right now for our intensive purposes. What we have to talk about, though, is the rules for how to use these guys. Now, here are your rules. I'm going to put them in a different color. And this is really fairly simple. Oh, I see it changed that to that color. Oh, well, that's fine. Let's do purple for this. All right, here are your rules. Ready? Longer adverbial phrases come at the end of the sentence. All right, so an example of that then, let's come up with an example. Il pense de temps en temps. That means he thinks from time to time. He thinks from time to time. Now remember, an adverbial phrase is going to answer the questions how, when, where, to what extent, under what condition, for what reason, or why. The whole phrase, de temps en temps, is the adverbial phrase. So you have short adverbs, right? And then you have longer ones. So longer adverbial phrases like this are going to come at the end of the sentence. He thinks from time to time. That's pretty similar to how we would do it in English, honestly, actually. This is where it starts to get a little fun though. Short adverbs, so like single words, like the ones you've got above, if we were just going to use one of those, they will go between between the verb and its object. So for example, he throws the ball well. We always pretty much stick adverbial phrases either at the beginning of a sentence or at the end. Those are the two options we have. But in French, short adverbs, so single verbs, go between the verb and its object. So, il jette bien le ball means he throws the ball well. But you'll notice bien is in between the verb and its object. Interesting, huh? All right. So that's an option for us. Short adverbs, single words. If we were just using one of the ones above, then that's where it would end up. All right. Adverbs of time, place, and means tend to be rather lengthy. Okay. Adverbs describing time, place, and means of operation, basically, is a good way of putting it. Tend to be very lengthy, so they come at the end. That's not so much a rule, that's just kind of something to be thinking through as you're looking at adverbs and starting to practice using them in French. Adverbs that describe time, place, and like means of operation, like how somebody is accomplishing something, those tend to be rather long, so they come at the end of the sentence. Or they can go at the beginning. So for example, the phrase aujourd'hui means today. Wait till you see this typed up. Aujourd'hui. Aujourd'hui, il a la classe. Today he has class. All right. That's a lengthy phrase there. Aujourd'hui is very long and it's very interesting to type up. And then adverbs of manner. Those tend to end in, they typically either a single word or they can end in mont. Okay. Adverbs of manner. That's like, you know, how somebody goes about doing something cheerfully, happily, etc. Heureusement is an excellent example of that. It can mean fortunately or it can mean happily. So, you know, it means somebody's doing something happily. It's an adverb of manner. Okay. If they end in mont, so like heureusement, they can appear between the verb and the object or after the object. Sometimes I have people go, well, you know, what's best? Either works. So stick with what's comfortable for you. Now, if it's comfortable for you to just put them all at the end, because that's easier for you, do it. If it's more comfortable for you to do like all the others and stick them between the verb and the object, go for it. That's entirely up to you. And then finally, adverbs. Quality, quantity, and frequency tend to be shorter. Okay. Adverbs of quality, quantity, and frequency tend to be shorter, so they come in between objects. Right. Adverbs of quality, quantity, and frequency tend to be shorter, so they come in between the verb. Okay. Adverbs of quality, so bien, for example. Il parle bien le français. He speaks French well. Is an option there for you. All right, so that's actually all I have for you today. Pretty straightforward, pretty short. to the point. Adverbial phrases, starting to add just another layer to your conversation skills in French, right? So get to talk about, we have a dog, you have a dog, I had a dog. We can now put things in past tense. Now we can talk about how we had a dog. I had a dog a long time ago. It's an adverbial phrase, right? I sing in the shower is an option for you, but now all of a sudden you can say I sing in the shower a lot, or I sing in the shower loudly, or etc. Right? So let me save these words here real fast. Perfect. All right, and then I'll make sure and make my notes available to you as well. Homework, we're gonna go really light. I'm actually just going to have you turn in your verbs today because I actually want to go through adverbial phrases in person and practice using these guys and then have them for you for homework next week. Okay. So just turn in your verbs, present tense and past tense for both of them. Call it good for right now. If you want to do something else, keep working on your Duolingo and make sure that you maybe are going back over your notes regularly, which I think you're already doing pretty regularly anyhow. So keep doing the good work. And I will see you in just a couple of days for our second semester of French 1. Have a lovely rest of your day.